Welcome back to the shop. I'm Richard. This is the LGR 6000 Li. Maintenance intervals are dependent upon the environment the unit is used in, but the new feature incorporated in the LGR 6000 Li, the control panel will prompt you for maintenance and cleaning of the coil and the filter. We're going to look at the three components that need maintenance. There's an inlet temperature and humidity sensor and access to it here, the coil assembly, and the condensate pump. Starting with the power cord, you want to inspect all throughout the entire run. Look for abrasions, cuts. Make sure the pins on the end of the plug are connected and not bent, and there's no damage or fraying to the IEC plug. Also inspect the condensate line. Check the quick disconnect that attaches to the unit, make sure it's not cracked. Check the length of the line to make sure there's no punctures. And on the back of the unit where the condensate line connects, inspect the quick disconnect there, make sure the O-ring is attached and there's no damage or chips to the disconnect there. The LGR 6000 Li includes a layered air filter. You want to pull the air filter out, inspect it, replace it if there's any dirt or debris built up in it. It is not a washable or cleanable air filter. The LGR 6000 Li is the simplest unit on the market to maintain with a 10 millimeter socket. There are 4 bolts you want to remove, 1 on each corner of the top and 1 at each corner on the bottom. Remove the front cover by lifting from the top. And do notice the gasketing on the inside of the front cover, the top and the bottom, and the gasketing at the sides of the coils. If the gasket is damaged or deteriorated, you'll need to replace. Should you need to clean the inlet temperature and humidity sensor, you can access it at the top corner. The inlet temperature and humidity sensor will generate an ER5 error code if it needs attention. But when cleaning the coils, we'll want to make sure we protect that sensor from any cleaning solution or rinsing water. And the best way to do that is to put a piece of plastic or a piece of corrugated from a box top over that sensor, so when you're applying that coil cleaner, it doesn't splash up and damage the sensor. You may dry clean the inlet temperature and humidity sensor using a soft cloth or compressed air. If you're using compressed air in a can, make sure you do not invert the can and spray liquid on there. Again, liquid cleaning will damage that inlet temperature and humidity sensor. When inspecting the coil assembly, you'll notice the coil has a blue coating. The coating adds to the efficiency, and as debris builds up on the coil, the first step is to vacuum the coil assembly from any debris. That counterflow will help pull it through. If you blow compressed air into the coil assembly, you'll just be blowing debris back into the unit, and we want to avoid that. So with a HEPA vac and a soft bristle brush, you don't want to poke the brush into the fin pack, but it'll allow you to get better airflow as the bristles get near the front. Vacuum the coil assembly off. Do not bend the fins, and be careful, the fins are sharp. And be careful, do not put the vacuum attachment up to the coil assembly. You can damage the fins. If the coil assembly does not come clean with the vacuum, you may use an alkaline-based coil cleaner, like all of our other products. After protecting the inlet temperature and humidity sensor from any coil cleaner or rinsing, you'll want to wash the coil assembly down from top to bottom. When doing this in the shop, we'll usually remove the condensate pump input line from the pump and place it into a collection container to collect the residue and debris that run off of the coil. When using coil cleaner, make sure to reference the SDS and wear appropriate PPE. Also, on the instructions of the coil cleaner, it will let you know how long to let the coil cleaner dwell and if it is a self-rinsing. After cleaning the coil assembly, make sure you put the condensate pump input line back into the pump. To remove the condensate pump from the housing, you just need to loosen 2 5/16 hex head screws You may also use a standard or flathead screwdriver. Back the screws out a few turns. Grab the condensate pump output line, has a quick disconnect. Pull out the output line and your condensate pump can lift, and there's plenty of cord length to access the unit on your workspace. To inspect the condensate pump, start with the output line. Make sure the quick disconnect O-ring is intact and there's no damage. Remove the condensate pump output fitting from the pump. Make sure the tab is intact. Look inside, remove any debris. Looking through at the duckbill check valve, you'll notice it may have a slight separation. A separation of 1/16 of an inch or less is acceptable. It relies on the water pressure from the output line to push back and close the valve. On the inlet side of the check valve, inspect the O-ring, replace if damaged, and you may remove the duckbill check valve from the fitting and inspect the inlet side and the outlet. Again, replace if the gap is greater than 1/16 of an inch or if there are any tears. To reassemble the check valve, push the duckbill fitting back into the quick disconnect. When installing in the condensate pump, thread down into the O-ring seats. Do not over-tighten. Hand-tight snug is acceptable. To inspect the inside of the condensate sump, you'll need a 1/4 inch or standard screwdriver to remove 4 screws that secure the top cover to the sump. The screws are located near each corner. Now the screws are removed, you may separate the top, which includes the condensate pump, from the sump. You'll want to clean the sump out with a soft cloth and inspect the edge, the top edge of the sump, to ensure there aren't any chips or cracks. You may also use detergent or your favorite disinfectant. After cleaning the condensate sump, you'll want to focus on the condensate pump. Inspect the top cover. Make sure the seal between the sump basin and the top cover is intact and in good quality. Turn the condensate pump housing assembly over. Inspect the safety float switch. The safety float switch engages if there's a blockage in the condensate line and will shut the unit off, generating an ER9 error code. The condensate pump inlet cover should be removed for inspection. There are 5 Phillips head screws on the bottom. When removing the screws, if you'll notice, 3 of the screws are short. They are on the 3 corners. And the 2 longer screws are near just inside of the output. After the 5 screws are removed from the condensate pump inlet cover, turn the condensate pump back over, give it a little wiggle and a pull, and the inlet cover comes off. Inspect the inlet cover for any scoring or damage in this area. Also inspect the diverter. The diverter insets into the inlet cover and points out to the outer edge. Inspect the O-ring for any damage. Once that's inspected, pull out the condensate pump drive line. The drive line will have a magnet near the top and the impeller near the bottom. The impeller should spin about 340 degrees and then catch. If it spins freely and catches, it's in good condition. You can put it back into the condensate motor housing. Take your inlet cover, assuring the diverter is pointing to the outer edge and the O-ring is in the groove, and reinstall back on the condensate pump housing. That concludes the basic maintenance of the condensate pump. Follow the reverse steps to reassemble and install back in the unit. When reinstalling the front cover, make sure the housing is aligned with the insert. Start the top two fasteners, but don't tighten all the way. The bottom will be aligned, so you can tighten these down. Always use a hand tool when reinstalling the fasteners. Using a cordless drill can open the opportunity to strip the insert. The last check we'll do in the service shop is to look over the control panel. We want to make sure there's no damage to the overlay. The buttons press and release. The control panel is mounted in a completely sealed electrical box. There's no need for preventive maintenance to remove dust or debris on the backside. And that concludes the basic maintenance for the LGR 6000 Li. For additional maintenance tips, please visit our website.